Welcome everyone to the Preschool Mindfulness Summit. I'm really excited to introduce you to Mayuri Gonzalez today. She's coming to us from littlefloweryoga.com and embodiedwisdom.com. Those are her websites that we'll have links to at the bottom, but she is a very well-known presenter, trainer, instructor. She's been working in the field of yoga and mindfulness for over 25 years, and she's currently the project director at Little Flower Yoga, and she's going to tell us a little bit about some of the very exciting things that they're doing, reaching thousands of students and educators in the New York City area. She's also a contributing author to Best Practices for Yoga in Schools, and the author of Yoga and Mindfulness for Teens card deck and Mindful Chair Yoga card deck. So we'll have links to all of those things so you can learn more about Mayuri afterwards if you like. But welcome and thank you so much for joining us today on the Preschool Summit.
Thank you. I'm happy to be with you.
Great. So tell us a little bit, first of all, about what's happening with Little Flower Yoga and New York. We just had a little chat before the start, and it's really quite interesting how this movement is spreading.
Yeah. So Little Flower Yoga was founded by Jennifer Cohen Harper in 2006. So we've been in the New York City public schools now for going on 14 years, which is wild to just believe. So we've been at it for quite some time. And, we now partner with between 60 and 80 schools per year, in our New York City public schools. And we reach between 8,000 and 10,000 students each year, and train about 3,000 teachers. So the work that we do really spans professional development trainings and direct service work with students. We also do a good amount of family engagement work, and then we have some products and things that allow teachers to continue the work when we're not in the classroom with them as well. So it's expanded tremendously. We were talking a lot that, there's a lot of equity work that's been done in the past few years around early childhood education. So pre-K has been made available for all students ages 3 and 4 over the last couple of years in New York City for no cost to families, which is radical in New York City. So all families, regardless of their financial situation, can actually get free early childhood education, public early childhood education at 3 and 4 now, which is really, really quite amazing. And, a lot of those schools are actually bringing mindfulness and yoga into their schools as a supplement, which is really exciting.
Yeah, wow, that's like a huge major development. So really good to hear that. So tell us a little bit about how movement, we know kids love to move. So how does movement help children develop their mindfulness?
Yeah, so especially with our youngest students, mindfulness and movement go hand in hand. So the way that we look at movement is 2 ways. I always say that movement is a playground for mindfulness, that it sort of allows the children to have this vast playground to explore mindfulness. So as we're moving, there's all of these different things that we're doing with our body that allow us to explore sensation, for example. So, as we're moving, we can explore what parts of our body are working, all of the different ways that our heart rate elevates, and we can notice that, with kindness and curiosity. And then we can notice as we're still how that changes. We can also notice how different types of movement make us feel energetically or emotionally. We can notice the different thoughts that happen, which is a little more challenging with our little ones to actually notice our thoughts, but it's something that we even believe in planting the seed when they're really little. Just the idea of noticing thoughts is something that then can scaffold as they're getting older. So the first thing that we kind of of look at is that it's kind of this playground for mindfulness. It's also a preparation for mindfulness. So, it's really hard for our kids to sort of get to some of those quieter practices when they have this abundance of energy, as we all know. So the movement sort of can really get out some of those wiggles and that energy in just a very practical way. So, if the kids come in at like a 10 energetic on an energy level, and then we want them to do some breathing or some quieter practice, it's not going to work, so sometimes you just like at a very practical level need to tire that. And movement is really good for that, just on a very practical level. So we look at kind of it as that playground and as the preparation.
Great. Yeah. So true. And I think sometimes that's why teachers get frustrated when they think they're trying to do something that the kids just aren't in the right frame to do at that moment. So tell us a little bit about how you incorporate music and movement into kind of this body awareness.
Yeah. So lots of ways. I mean, I actually, one of the classes I had mentioned to you that I've held on to myself, quite selfishly, even as the program director, I actually teach in a Montessori school myself, that I've actually taught in for 8 years myself. And it's like, it's in my community. No matter how busy I get, I actually stay there. It's pretty amazing because I've seen these children grow. I see siblings each year. They come in. I'm like, I know you because I can see a sibling that related to. So I teach 2 to 5 year olds myself actually every week, and it's been really beautiful. And a lot of the ways I use music and movement with them in their mindfulness curriculum is I have songs, for example, that I open and close class with. That are really, really nice. I also, have a whole section of movement at the beginning. Little Flower Yoga actually has like a 5-element methodology that I think actually lends itself really well to kind of looking at this. Is like every week I connect, breathe, move, focus, and relax. And we look at those as like 5 pathways to mindfulness. And as you can see, movement is just one of them, but it's kind of in the middle, but I might, sing at the beginning and the end. And, throughout the whole thing, we're practicing mindfulness, even when we're moving. But the movement, will be a chunk, and we might have to move right at the beginning because they just walk in and they have a lot of energy. And if I try to do the breathing or I try to connect to how we're feeling without even doing the movement right at the get, that's just not going to work.
Yeah. So what for teachers, well, for everyone, what would you say makes movement mindful and not mindful? Like, what's the difference?
It's a great question, because people will say to me all the time, it's one of my pet peeves. They're like, oh, I practice mindfulness, I do yoga. And I'm like, well, it depends. It depends. Not all yoga is inherently mindful. It depends. Like, or, I go running. I'm mindful. I go running. I'm like, well, I run and I'm definitely not mindful. I don't want to be mindful when I'm running because I wouldn't do it. So I think, if we are practicing being present, if we're practicing being in the moment and noticing what's happening with kindness and curiosity, that's, essentially Amy Saltzman's definition of mindfulness, which is one that we resonate with really deeply, and that we teach the children actually. So if we're practicing while we're moving, noticing what's happening in our body, noticing what's happening with our breath, noticing if we like the movement or we don't, noticing if we want to be doing something else or not. So that's often, even when I teach adults yoga, I'm like, noticing if you're cursing me out and you don't want to be doing this thing right now. Like, that's practicing mindful movement. Like, noticing if you really would rather be doing something else right now and it's hard to stay here. Like, that's pretty mindful of what's happening. Noticing if your arms are shaking, noticing if they're feeling tired or heavy or light. Anytime we're noticing the sensations or the feelings or the thoughts we're having while we're moving, that's that's practicing mindful movement. If we're doing our grocery list while we're moving, or we're planning what we're going to be doing later, or we're remembering what happened yesterday, or we're, in the minds of our youngest students, we're kind of daydreaming about what's happening, or, we're rolling up in our yoga mat like a burrito, which is very typical in my classes. Just fine.
Yes, that's favorite.
Totally fine. It's like very developmentally appropriate. I just want to name that too. Not so mindful movement. It's just playful, and that's okay. Okay.
Yeah, a really good explanation. So, Mayuri, can you share with us maybe some of your favorite practices, short exercises and things that children really love and you found beneficial in your classes?
Sure. So, there's so many, but, one of the practical things we love to do is teach movement with, like call and response, to practically teach things. And then with a check-in before and after. So I think that that's like a very practical, very easy way to teach movement. It also makes it, I think, less threatening for people to teach movement, because you don't feel like you have to elaborately instruct things, which actually does not work with younger students. So some of the instruction you might see in an adult yoga class where people are saying like elongate through your fingers, rotate your inner arm bones, like that does not work with little kids. Reach your arms up to the sky works really well with little kids. So for example, we might do something with like a call and response, like sun salutation. And I actually did this yesterday with my pre-K kids. I'll put this in the resource guide that I'll link to here so that you can do this. So I'll just say it, and maybe you could say it after me, Helen.
Okay, sure.
And then you can just visualize what we would be doing. It's really simple. But reach up high.
Reach up high.
Hang down low.
Hang down low.
Be in a forward bend. Walk my feet back nice and slow.
Walk my feet back nice and slow.
Be in plank pose right now. Belly on the ground.
Belly on the ground.
You'd be all the way on the floor. Cobra pose.
Cobra pose.
Be in a little snake pose now. Up to downward dog we go.
Up to downward dog we go.
And breathe.
And breathe.
And breathe.
And breathe.
Walk my feet up to my hands.
Walk my feet up to my hands.
Reach up high.
Reach up high.
Bring my arms down to my side.
Bring my arms down to my side.
And a big breath in.
And a big breath in.
And a big breath out.
And a big breath out.
Good. And we might do that like 3 times in a row. And then I'll ask the children to check in with the different parts of their body. So before we might do an energy level check-in prior, and I might ask the children to notice if their energy is a 1, 2, or a 3. 1 is that their body is really tired. 2 is it's in the middle. 3 is it feels really crazy and really energetic. And then afterwards, I'll ask them to notice, is your body a 1, 2, or a 3 again? Has it changed? And we'll do a post check-in. And I do that a lot with the students. I also might not do it prior, but I also might just ask them to notice, like I'll do a little body scan afterwards. So after we do maybe the 3 sun salutations, I might ask them to notice, like, what's going on with your breathing? Is it smooth or is it choppy? What's going on with your arms? Do they feel light or are they tired? What's going on in your belly? Can you notice any feelings? And now mind you, and I think this is important to note, like the kids are yelling at me now. Like they're not, it's not rhetorical. Like they're telling me the things outside. And I think that that's like something that a lot of people when they're first teaching like young children don't really understand, that they think that it's the same as teaching adults, that they're going to like think these things, which they don't. They answer the questions out loud in real time. And that's perfectly fine. That's to be expected. Yeah, so that's an example of a practice that I would do. And I actually that's a practice like that I actually might do every class, because with pre-K kids, I actually believe a lot in repetition. So there's I have a warm-up song that I do. I have like those call and response sun salutations are things that I actually incorporate into every class to kind of ritualize a repetition that then they're really used to. Right. And then I switch other things in just to make it interesting.
Yeah. And I think you mentioned that you can share some videos with our viewers, so we can put those in there as well, so you can get an actual feeling of some of the other activities. So Mayuri, what would you say to a teacher that, they keep reading about the benefits of this, they really want to try it, but they are getting frustrated, maybe because of some of the things we talked about earlier, like our own expectations of what could happen. What would you recommend? Where should they start, and what would be helpful for them?
Yeah, I mean, I think at the beginning, it's important to recognize, first of all, cultivating our own practice is really important, and this is something I'm always recommending to people, that, how I feel inside. I've been practicing mindfulness and yoga and meditation actually since I was a child. So I think that really has carried me very, very far, but that doesn't mean that we have to have decade-long practice in order to be able to do this. But I will say that how I feel internally matters drastically in what happens in the classroom. So the first thing I will say is cultivating your own practice, even if it's not 30 minutes or an hour long, even if it's just 10 minutes, even if it's sitting in the car for 5 minutes and really, really tapping in before you go into practice is a big thing. I also think that, choosing a duration of class that you feel confident with at the beginning. I can actually hang out with pre-K kids for an hour now and actually be with them with mindfulness and yoga for an hour. But it took some time to feel like I knew what to do to really be engaging without being entertaining, which is a really slippery slope to be in, to find that balance. So, finding the right duration of time for yourself where you feel like you can anchor yourself and own that. So whether it's, I offer 20-minute mindfulness sessions, and that's what I offer, and standing in that this is what I own, and then building up to 45 minutes. With my pre-K kids, I actually, offer 45-minute sessions for my 3 and 4-year-olds, and I work with the 2-year-olds for 25 minutes. And again, that's what I feel good with. But you have to do what feels right for you internally, and then the other thing I would just say is, the last piece of advice is try to observe other teachers. I also will say that I think that part of the reason why I've become a really, really incredible teacher is that I have the real privilege of actually getting to observe all of the teachers that I supervise. Part of my job is that I supervise and manage 26 teachers who work for me in the school yoga project and work for Little Flower Yoga. So actually, and they're incredibly talented and really special human beings who work for us in our schools. And so, getting to see these folks teach, I will not lie that I have picked up tips and tricks from them, as their boss sometimes. Right. So actually getting to be able to see them and go out and see them do their work has really helped me to grow. Because I'm ooh, wow, that worked. That's great. Yeah. And and I'll give you an example. Kelly Love, who teaches in a charter school in the Bronx, she came up with hand gestures for Jennifer Cohen Harper's 5 elements. So she does, connect, breathe, move, focus, relax. I totally do that with my pre-K kids, and they adore it, you know, but I saw her do that at one of her, in one of her classes, and I'm like, oh my God, that's amazing. But watching her do that then inspired me. So if you ever have the opportunity to observe other teachers, and a lot of folks, believe it or not, would be open to inviting you into their classes. So I know like, Little Flower Yoga does have a directory of teachers, like on their website. Mindful Schools has one. There's like some directories around, and then just ask, you know, look up in your community and say, like, would it be possible for me to come and observe you? I would love just to see another teacher. Maybe you can observe me. Like, can we like offer each other some support?
Yeah, I love that. That's like amazing tip, because I think that's so true in all areas in teaching. I always advocate, you know, visiting other schools, seeing what people are doing, and so I love that. And within the mindfulness classes, I think that's a really great idea. Maybe we can start an international exchange of mindfulness observations. Yeah, great. Well, thank you so much, Mayuri, for coming on and sharing so many great ideas and tips, and telling us all the amazing things that you're up to. And thank you for providing such great resources as well, which we'll have the links to in the speaker bio below, so you can find out more and get all those great resources and use them in your own classes. But thanks again for sharing and for taking the time to come on today.
Thank you for having me, Helen. I hope this is supportive and that everyone continues their journey.
Thanks.